Howdy folks, welcome to Camera Shake, where we bring you the insider scoop on all things photography and videography, giving you a unique opportunity to stay ahead of the curve. We spent literally hundreds of hours interviewing some of the most renowned photographers of our time, giving you access to knowledge and expertise that's not available anywhere else. As always, I'm your host Kirsten Nuts, and in today's episode, we're going to explore photography in the city that I have called my home for over 25 years now, and one of the most photographic cities in the world, London. So buckle up, grab a cold one, and let's shake it up with today's guests right after this. Welcome to Camera Shake Podcast, episode 145. And by the way, I have one small favor to ask of you. We've got some incredible, amazing news coming up. So if you enjoy this podcast, please join the Camera Shake community over on camerashakepodcast.com so that you're the first ones to know. You'll find the link in the description, or if you're watching on YouTube, it'll be right down here somewhere on the screen. But without further ado, let's give it up for today's special guest, the UK-based photographer, Leica aficionado, film shooter, and one of the top street photographers in London today, Gilbert Majekodunmi. Gilbert, man, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. It's actually quite incredible how we met. Do you remember how we met?
Yes, I remember. I think it was somewhere in central London, loading up the Rolleiflex.
Exactly,
then, it's just boom, magic from there.
Exactly. I just bumped into you. Actually, I was at a little sort of street photography outing that I'll do once in a while, with a bunch of people, local photographers from around where I live. And I just saw this guy with a Rolleiflex, and I'm thinking, oh, that's pretty cool. And then, we started to chat, had a conversation, and then when we exchanged Instagram handles, and when I checked out your stuff, I was like, whoa, what the heck? That's awesome. Oh, your photography is it's phenomenal, man.
Thank you. Thanks. Really appreciate that,
No, man, it's incredible. We've got all of your Instagram details and everything else, obviously, in the description. So if anyone's interested, make sure you check that out because it is incredible. We've talked about street photography, in the past on this podcast. One of the things, one of the subjects that's very popular, and we've had a guest on from New York City previously, and we've been talking about shooting street photography in New York City. You're obviously very London-based. Tell me a little bit about your sort of connection with the city of London.
I think with my style of photography, being London-based, it's more like bringing you the world I see every day. It's the high intensity, the hustle and bustle, the whole what I like to call concrete jungle vibe that London has. It's so diverse. In some parts of London, you're completely in a different world where it's mega structures, skyscrapers and everything. And then some parts it's just so, how would I put it? A bit like the New York vibe. Do you see what I mean? A bit like grungy and graffiti arts. And in some places, it's extremely clinical, like high mega structure, super architecture. And it's just it's the blend between both of them, especially when it comes into play with highlights and shadows and just the lives of Londoners as they move through that city every single day. So yeah, that's one thing I love about shooting in London.
Have you lived in London all your life?
No, all my life. I think about 10, 12 years now.
It's I moved to London back in the sort of mid-90s, and the first thing that I noticed when I remember flying in for the first time, and back then London looked very different. And this is only like 25 years ago or something, right? There weren't really any skyscrapers to speak of. In fact, Canary Wharf was the only skyscraper at the time. So, the London skyline that we know today with the Gherkin and the walkie-talkie and all of those weird buildings with weird names, they didn't exist back then. And I remember my first impression flying in thinking, wow, this is it's a really flat city.
Yeah. True, very true.
And you could see Tower Bridge, of course, across the river, and and Canary Wharf sticking out. But now there's sort of this I don't know how to describe it. It's like a metropolitanness that's been creeping in over the last couple of decades, and it's really changed central London in many ways.
I think it's become more like a mega city over time. Because I remember when I started living in London, this was just shortly after my uni and everything. It wasn't as intense as it is now. Because it's like everywhere you go, sometimes it's a sea of heads, literally. And then on some Sunday mornings, central London, completely empty. That kind of takes me back to the pandemic we had, lockdown. Obviously, going out for your daily exercises, probably had a bit longer exercise than normal. A couple of miles walking into the dead center of London itself, and it's so empty. It just kind of reminds you how much of nature we've taken back with all these cities and mega structures and everything. But yeah, it's a quickly, fastly expanding metropolis, like you said. It's
Yeah, this
amazing.
and
Yeah,
architecturally, it's this sort of this this blue steel, concrete,
yeah,
and glass that's literally encroaching on this underbelly, which is this traditional brick
yeah,
Victorian London. That we can still see everywhere, which is amazing.
yeah. But it's slowly fading away now. You
Yeah.
get more of, like you said, the gherkin and the cheese grater, which is nice. But then again, historic London is making its way out for the new London. So it's the futuristic London. Well, not sure how old, but when we were younger, we would look at London today as like, wow, that's what it would be like in the future. The skyscrapers and super quick trains and all that. But it's time flies, I guess.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I used to work in Canary Wharf in the mid 90s. I came to London to study music, and then on the side I was doing some low paid jobs to keep my head over water basically whilst I was at college, and so I worked at Canary Wharf back when it was just one building essentially. I think the HSBC building hadn't been built yet, so it was literally like it was just a flat square with one building on it, and that was it. And the train station, like, Canary Wharf as it exists today, this super modern structure, of course, didn't exist either. So, and I went back a few weeks ago for in fact, when we met, it was
Yeah.
the same evening I went to see the Festival of Light,
Oh, nice.
which is cool. It's been the first time that I've been back there in many, many years. And it's just incredible how that area alone
I
has
know
changed
it's magical,
completely.
isn't it? It's
It's
like
incredible.
being in a different city.
Yeah. It's,
Just
it's,
completely,
it's
it's like
literally,
own energy completely, you know?
yeah. And it's like a time warp. It's like
Yeah.
stepping into the future. It's incredible.
Especially when you walk through what do you call it? Is it the Adams Plaza, the little bridge with the rainbow or the multicolor? It's like you're going through a vortex and then boom, like, whoa, what is this? All of a sudden you feel so small
Yeah.
because of the structure surrounding you. It's amazing. It's
And if
amazing.
anybody's seen the same area, like literally 30 years ago, it would have been desolate. It would have been like
Yeah.
brick buildings,
It's
warehouses.
stark contrast to somewhere like Portobello, which is
Yes.
a bit of old London, you see, or like Hackney and around. But it's amazing. It's one of my favorite places to go shooting. Actually, Canary Wharf is nice because especially when you have this time of the year, the winter side, it's quite set low, isn't it? So you have
Hmm.
this massive. You can get someone walking past and this huge shadow, which is what skill 4 to 1 of the person, and
Yeah.
it is magical. It's an amazing slice of London.
Yeah, and London is so versatile. You mentioned Portobello. In fact, I used to live on the corner of Portobello. Um, it was on the corner of, I can't remember the street name now. Whatever it was, right, like right around the corner from Portobello Street. And of course, there you have the exact opposite.
Yeah,
The old Victorian, um, quite. I mean, it's again different from when you look at East London, for example. Because in East London you have the real like working class kind of,
yes,
the terraced houses, and that old, Victorian style. Portobello is different because it's a little bit more upmarket sort of a thing.
yeah, kind of, yeah.
So you've got all of that variety, in London still, which really makes it a city that has this unique blend of different architectural styles
Yeah.
and people. That's the other thing.
Oh yeah, true, true. That's one of the things that I've always said to myself. I wanted to go around more the country and photograph streets. Well, I've got everything here, London. Different people, different characters, depending on what time of the day you go out. If you head out to probably Soho, 7:30 on a Saturday evening, you would trust me have a different feel compared to a midday and a weekday or something. So it's amazing. It's such a diverse, interwoven city. I wouldn't even call it a city, probably just like you said earlier, metropolis. It's magical. It's magical, yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see, London. I mean, having lived in London for such a long time now, um, I've also been witness to how it's changed. And you always think like, oh, well, I mean, these things, especially when you're younger, you always think, oh, well, these things change so slowly, you don't notice it. But actually now that I can look back over 25 years of having lived in the area, it's just incredible how it's changed so dramatically. And from a photographic point of view, of course, it's offered up so much more variety now. You know,
Yeah.
what's your sort of go-to? Do you have a go-to place where you shoot in London?
Um, that's a tricky one, you see. Thinking about it now, where is my go-to place? If you did ask me right now, where would I go straight to shoot? I think, well, you know what, maybe because of distance, a bit closer to me, my favorite place to shoot is Paddington.
Cool.
Yeah, Paddington, 400 speed film, 50 mil, boom, that's it. I'm like that.
What makes Paddington special for you?
It's just the thing is, I think when you get into Paddington Station, you have the what do you call it? It's not pergola as such. It's just you have the everyone who knows my photos. I'm obsessed with lines, my verticals. So you have these converging lines with the trains, and that just sets me. It sparks something in me that makes you want to photograph. So it's the lines, the architecture, and just the busyness of the whole place. You can literally stand in one spot in Paddington and get 20 good photos because of just so much stuff. You get old lady walking with the grandkids, someone running off with the dog, or someone sprinting across, or one of the guys in the train station with the caddies. So much, there's just so much you can get in that little, what, square mile or two. And it's, yeah, that is one of my favorite places to shoot. It's centrally, well, previously it was central of London. But there's just something magical about Paddington. It's the architecture as well. With the Elizabeth line now, you have a bit of the ultra modern subway system and everything, but you have a bit of the old Paddington as well, the 1800s design. And so it's just a little bit of everything all in one square. So yeah, that is my favorite spot, Paddington.
It's an
What's the
interesting thing.
triax?
It's an interesting thing you mentioned architecture because that's something that's really evident from your imagery. And again,
Yeah,
I urge everyone listening to this or watching this to go over it and check out your Instagram profile. But it's really evident that your eye is really drawn to a lot of architectural lines
yeah,
because it's this really beautiful blend of you know of architecture, lines, buildings, and also people. There because you also
yeah,
take a mean like street portrait at the
yeah,
same time.
yes. I think that came from when I started photography. I fell in love with cityscapes. That was my first. But then I found myself in street photography. So what I do now is almost like how would I call it? It's like an urban geometric, not reportage, not photojournalistic. There's something in between both of them that it's not really photojournalistic. But having lost the touch of searching for lines, but now there's more people into it. How people go about the daily business. Just thinking about one of my favorite photos of last year was this guy coming down the escalator, and he had his little dog on his shoulder. The dog tried to jump off, he caught it, and it's just that. So that action going on, and you have the lines of the parallels of the rails of the escalators coming down. So it's just a perfect mix between geometry and the candid you know, unscripted street photography. But yeah,
That's the thing that really interests me when it comes to street photography is the sort of unscripted aspect of it because
yeah,
you don't really know what you're going to end up with, you know.
no, you don't. You know, and one thing I'm not sure if this happens to everyone. It's something I'm guilty of. I'm trying my best to improve. I tend to miss 60% of my best photos because you see them, you hesitate. You're there, you're thinking, do I take the shot? Go for it. If I'm to give out any piece of advice today based on my experience, that's one thing I'll encourage people, all photographers, to do more. Just go for it. What's the worst that would happen? Because I've lost out on a few amazing moments because I hesitated. I just thought, you know what, do I take this photo? What if I take this photo and this person sees me? Because I try to avoid eye contact as much as possible. But yeah, it's amazing. You just never know what you would find. You step off your house, you turn left, you turn right, bang, there's a photo. Or you're out for the whole day, an hour or two, nothing. And you way back, then you see it. So you just get yourself ready.
What's especially when you're shooting digital, it's relatively easy to just basically go for it, you know, and take lots of photos. Especially when you see somebody, let's say you see somebody walking through like sort of a pool of light somewhere or something, you know, you can just basically hammer it out and then just, you know, hope for the best, you know, and hope that there's going to be one shot in there where it's, you know, it's perfect. But you shoot a lot of film, and I'm guessing you're gonna have to be a lot more kind of measured when you take
Yes.
pictures.
Yes. Because I have a point of departure, so to say. I know what exactly I want from that day. So the way I see it is a roll of film, 36 shots. I need just four. Four good photos in that roll of film to make it relevant. But then everything else is just chance, a bit of luck, timing. But when I see the photo, try to get myself ready and then boom, that's it. But I think that's where the whole love for geometry helps me because you have two types of street photographers. You have the what do you call them again? The hunters and the fishers. I'm a bit of a hunter. Not really patient enough to sit in one spot and wait for. Nah, it's just there's just something in me. I'm out there with my camera. I just want to go ahead and take photos. So if I find a nice scene, like, nice lines and everything, I just wait a film, about 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, and then bang, perfect. Scene framed, perhaps a walkthrough, photo completed, and everything else from that is just pure fun. Yeah, and then yeah, that's it. That's that's the way I make the most out of shooting film because it can be quite scary, especially with obviously prices and everything. And then just knowing that you can waste a whole roll and then get nothing.
Yeah.
But with digital, I'm a bit more prolific. Just shoot, 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 shoot. It's almost like spray and pray. But I prefer film. It's a bit more. It grounds me a bit more. It makes me think better about what I want to get from that shooting session. Really,
And
it's film speed. If it's color, if it's black and white, if it's slide film, which I started shooting a lot again recently. And then yeah,
I think that's really key is that you know, having a measured approach and knowing what you're hunting, so to say, you know.
yeah,
But of course, a lot of things really come into that, like knowledge of the city, for example. You know, knowing
true.
where to be, when, you know, at what time of the day or even what time of the year, because you know, like, well, in this area, the light's going to be gorgeous at that time. You know, like you mentioned earlier, at Canary Wharf, you get the tall buildings, the skyscrapers, and you
Yeah,
know these strips of sky, and then you know exactly when the light comes in that way, and the
also, yeah.
you know, and that's really a key thing, I think, is to have that in-depth knowledge of the area that you're photographing.
Of course.
So
It's really important, yes, yeah.
so if you like, since you've photographed London, have you noticed like a change in the way you approach things?
Uh, yeah. I think when I switched from cityscapes to street photography, it was one of the most awkward moments of my life. The fact that I'm a very relaxed, laid back person naturally, right? So to go with the camera right in someone's face, and it's a bit wow, a bit out of my comfort zone normally. So since that, I think with over time, me, my camera, and the city have kind of become one in this weird like synergy. I know where to go, when to go, and how to go about my photography. So I think it's all about practice, a bit of confidence, knowledge about the city, like you said, because there are certain. I mean, London is pretty safe, even though I mean the world is the world, and everything happens everywhere nowadays, right? London is pretty safe, but there is a level of ethics that you just have to have at the back of your mind when you're photographing. I try not to photograph kids. That's just my preference. I've got a 5-year-old myself. I know how I might react if I saw someone come to me with a camera. I try to stay away from families when they have the private moments. But then again, if it's, say, for example, I'm on the other side of a train on the tube, and you have a window framed, you have a kid facing back towards me, I take the shot. It's not intrusive. It's an honest photo. So it's all about just being streetwise at the same time, because street photography is one of those genres of photography that could get pretty ugly if you get on the wrong side
Well,
of the wrong person, you know?
yeah, and I think that's the fear for a lot of people is, the potentially negative reaction
Yeah,
that you might get, when you're out in the street photographing other people. And it's got, there could be a number of reasons for that. First of all, people obviously treasure their privacy.
yeah,
One can understand that. The other thing is also that people don't necessarily understand what the legal ins and outs actually
yeah,
are when it comes to street photography. And so it's, there's always this sort of, I think it's a fear of rejection. I think that's sort of what plays, on the mind of a lot of people when they're photographing. And I can feel that myself because I love street photography. I'm not, I'm a portrait photographer. That's usually what I do. Usually I work under very controlled conditions. It's usually what happens. But but I love street photography, and for me, it's like it's a great leveler where I can enjoy photography without any rules and without any, any basically where I just have to totally react to whatever is happening around me.
it's liberating.
Yeah,
You're the master and architect of whatever you're doing.
yeah,
You have all this huge infinite canvas of the city to literally do exactly what you feel like.
yeah.
Yeah,
Liberating is exactly that's the word I was looking
yeah,
for. Exactly, it is
yeah,
absolutely liberating. But it also comes with that little, with that sense of fear, the thing that keeps you on your edge, and that's the thing where you kind of think like, oh well, you know, what if somebody turns around and tells me to stop shooting, or has a go at me, or ask me, to I don't know, delete a photo, or
delete it. Yeah,
you
I've
know,
had that a few times.
yeah,
I just showed at the back of the camera, like it's sorry, it's film. So just let go.
excellent,
Yeah. But yeah, you're 100% correct because a lot of people scared of rejection, and I believe it or not, 50-50 is for me. Sometimes people are like, no, 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 just don't put the camera in my face. And sometimes I make friends with people and I'm having a full conversation. Oh, where are you from? Where'd you get this, that, this, that? Here's my Instagram. Oh, you need to photography as well. Like we bumped into each other. That was the
exactly.
same. I think I loaded the camera and I saw you and your friends you were with. I thought, oh, I'd get a quick photo of these guys. And then you came up and then we started talking and here we are today. So
Exactly.
it does open doors beyond taking a photo of someone. You never know who you would meet on the street. It could
Absolutely.
be a life-changing encounter. It could be just a casual photo. Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible, and especially in a city like London, where you have such a diverse
Oh yeah.
population as well. It's so super interesting. That's what I find. Um, I tell you what, when I went to London last time, like a few weeks ago, or a couple of months ago when we met, the thing that really struck me was how super busy it was with tourists again. I haven't really or hadn't experienced that since before the pandemic, and I
Yeah.
kind of forgot what that was like, a little bit.
It's the city has thawed out, become of hibernation, and say, right, back again, back alive again. But yeah, it was. Based on what you said just now, that kind of takes me back to one of the photos I took earlier in the pandemic. I think it was somewhere near Marble Arch. It was, and Marble, no, no, Marble, Piccadilly Circus was. You know where you have the curved street. Usually that place is one of the most busy parts of London, right? I got this photograph of a bus with just the bus driver, a passenger on top, and no one else.
Hmm.
It felt like the whole city had been edited. Like you paused there, deleted all the people, and then played. It was there's some like an eerie feel, like really, really ghost towny, scary almost feel to the city. But it's a good thing that it's back alive again. You know, such a massive place that globally everyone talks and looks up to London or those that live in London. And for it to be that quiet felt a bit wrong. It felt really out of.
Let me just say a quick thank you to our sponsor, DVE Store. DVE Store's mission is to help you create better video and provide you with the tools necessary to explore your creativity. If you have any digital video equipment needs, whether that's camera equipment, audio gear, or lighting, and much more, you can check them out at dvestore.com. Thank you to DVE Store for the high-def video. And of course, you can find a link to DVE Store in the description. Yeah, the pandemic was a weird time for London, because I remember actually my friend Nick and I, we were supposed to meet up and go into London for a street photography trip. But it was just at the time when the infection levels, like when the numbers went through the roof. And we decided, so in the spur of the moment, we decided, well, maybe it's not a good idea to go into London right now. Maybe let's go to some other place, like maybe somewhere by the coast, that's not as busy. So we decided to go to Brighton instead and just spend a day just doing some street photography in Brighton, which was super fun. I actually got some awesome shots there. But then, of course, the pandemic hit, and it was literally 2 years of more or less complete shutdown. And then eventually we said, okay, we're going to have to catch up with this idea of going to London. And so we did. And it was just at a time when things had opened up again, but people were still very careful. Like, although I think, you could go back into town, like hardly anybody did. And so we got this unique view of London where, I remember walking down the Strand and thinking, I've never seen this so empty. I mean, if there were like 3 pedestrians, that was a lot. And yeah, it was incredible. It gave us an opportunity to go to some places and photograph a few places in a way that we're probably never going to see them again, unless there's another pandemic, of course. But, yeah. But, so we went to, there's a cobble street around the back of Tower Bridge, and I forget what it's called now. But it's basically, it's a narrow old street flanked with old warehouses from like 200 years ago, whatever. And there's some iron cast iron bridges that go across. It's like one of these old London kind of pictures. It's a cobble street. Cool. If I remember the name of the street, I will put it in the description or in the bottom half of this video if you're watching YouTube.
It's
yes.
What do you call it? It's still over
and it has an angle because they used to. So one row of buildings on one side of the street, the warehouses bordered onto the Thames, and they used to load in goods and barrels, for example. And so they then rolled the barrels across these bridges that were at an angle into the building on the other side, the warehouse on the other side of the street. And that's why they're at an angle. I never do that, but, it's. I think I saw it on some TikTok thing. But anyway, so, it makes sense. But nowadays, of course, they're all like apartment buildings and, people set up like little garden chairs and some garden furniture, whatever, on these bridges. And it's just such a unique view down there. But of course, it's also packed with people usually. It's one of these tourist places. It's literally just it just comes off of Tower Bridge on the south side of the river. And seeing that street so empty with literally just a few people dotted around it, it's something that at that time of day as well, you'll probably never never find again. That was the interesting part about that. So what did you do during the pandemic? Did you take that opportunity to go into London and photograph it empty?
Tell you what, pandemic was more of gardening. Trust me about that. More of gardening and yeah, I think because we couldn't go anywhere, it was just myself, the little one, and missus. Yeah, gardening, photos around, the odd walks to the park, and I think I took a lot of photos of them in the house, but that was before I went more into analog, so I had enough time to mess about with digital and all that. But yeah, it, it was strange because it did happen. The pandemic happened when I got more interested in street photography. That was just at the end. I think that was the cusp of where I started moving from cityscapes to street, because it made me realize how much more I wanted to see people in my photos by not seeing anyone during the pandemic. So I was okay, right. Normally I'd probably have to wait a long time for no one to go through the scene so I can get just a shot of this building or I don't know, a stairwell or something. But then I find that it's so empty. It's just concrete, literally just concrete. And then my career started. I started photographing people I see, two, three, four people coming back as the restrictions got lifted and everything. And then, yeah, it's almost like during the pandemic that was my transition period from mainly architecture and city to full blown, not Bruce Gilden's kind of level into your face street
So
photography.
you started
what
obviously
I
you
do
started
now.
shooting digital,
Yeah.
and then you moved into shooting film. What was that sort of thought process like?
Yes. Um, I think what happened was it got to a point where all my photos started to feel the same. There was something I was searching for, an organic feeling. Then I started researching and I said, oh, okay, what is this? Road effects. Initially, I saw a video from Peter McKinnon. Everyone knows Peter McKinnon. So he had this camera on the backdrop. So what's that? So I paused it and looked into it. The road effects. Oh, that looks nice. I wanted to get one to put on my shelf to make me look cool and such. Uh, so I got it. It was dead cheap. It was just right after the pandemic and everything. Uh, put a raw film through it. Now, everyone who shoots film would probably hate me for this, right? But we all learn from one point again. Put a raw film through it, 12 exposures, open the back, and I went like that. I was like, oh, man, what have I just done? So that was my first ever raw film exposed. Oh, goodness, what have I just done? So I go back and Google and start researching. Okay. I had another one, it was HP5, popped into the camera, closed off, took it to the nearest photo lab, and I think it was going to take 7 days. Sent off, went back, got in the scans with it. I was like, oh my goodness, what is this? So I think it was the grain, the character of the lens and everything. I was like, oh my goodness, this looks nice. So then I shot with the roller effects a bit, started researching, and I picked up my first Leica, the M6, and I never looked back from that. Since then, it's been me and the Leica rangefinder. But yeah, it was just something refreshing. I feel film is better than digital, which a lot of people might be like, oh, really? What? I feel personally film is better than digital. If you shoot film right, the right settings, good enough light, you can get some really, 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 really magical results.
So how does your
Really,
thinking change when you switch from digital to film? Like what's your sort of thought process that you go through in order to expose something accurately on film, for example?
It's okay. The first part is my mentality flipped. No, you should digital. You expose for the highlights, isn't it? But now I find myself
Right.
metering for the shadows. And this came not first day, not even after a year. This was a lot of trial and error and practice. And I realized, hang on a minute, there's more latitude on the highlight side, which is opposite to digital. And then it because of how much film I shoot, the volume of film I shoot, I really don't see any restriction. And probably thinking it's just it doesn't matter if it's 36, it's another stone, put them back, pop another roll in. But then having a Leica rangefinder as well, which is digital, it's kind of taken me away from all my luxuries I did enjoy when I was just, well, with other shooting systems, Sony, for example, where you have 10 frames per second and it's just boom, boom, boom. I try to get it, frame it, one shot. So I treat my digital
Yeah.
camera like an analog camera as well. So it's all one, it's all
It's actually
like
that's very similar
so
to
to say.
the way I approach concept photography. So I used to be a musician. Well, I'm still a musician, really.
Yeah.
But my way into photography was I started shooting bands and friends of mine, who were playing. And so in the beginning, I used to do exactly the same thing. I used to basically, spray and pray, the whole time. And you end up with a gazillion of shots, and you upload them into Lightroom or something, and you go like, oh, shoot, now I'm going to have to go through 4,000 photos. Damn. And so what's happened over time is that now, I would say I have a pretty good instinct when it comes to, working out what's happening on stage, and so preempting what is about to happen, because that's the thing. So you get to develop this instinct of what is about to happen, so that you can actually hit the shutter button at the right time. And so now what I do is I like double tap, I basically just go boom, boom, and it's worked beautifully because now the overall amount of images that I come home with is much reduced, but actually they're all better.
And it keeps your thinking clear. Because okay, this is of the lead singer with the mic, with energy in the photo. And then you have like another one, maybe wide angle with everyone, 28 mil or 21. So you're almost more like a film director in the sense you know exactly what you want to get from it. So it's just all about waiting for that right moment.
Yeah.
Time, shoot.
So do you develop your film yourself, or do you?
I do, yeah. I do.
Oh, wow, okay.
Black, white, color, slide, I do, yeah.
That really takes me back. My dad used to develop black and white film back when I was a kid, and so what he would do is we'd just see, like, living in an apartment, he had one bathroom, and he would basically turn the bathroom into a dark room. It'd be like, well, as long as you can see red light shining through underneath the door, don't come in. Okay, well, fine, But I remember like the smell of the chemicals and everything. That would just take me back.
Yeah, but that's one of the bright sides of film shooting today. Most of the new formulas are not as harsh as what I'm new into film. I've been shooting film for about 2.5 years now. So in the film world, I'm technically a baby, but I've kind of learned really, really quick because of a lot of more things available to us nowadays. If you want to get more of a developer, you can get it. Unlike, previously where you had to go to a lab or go to a particular retailer who only sold Excel or something, or HC110, whatever developers people use. But everything's all available now. You go online, you order it, in 2 days it's at home. But what I've noticed is the chemicals are less harsh, less toxic. The ones I use, anyways. The whole process is easier. It's a lot easier. There is this lab box. I don't know if you heard about it. It's a It's like a daylight developing tank. I do tend to use it as well as my Hudson. Sometimes just really just want to get home and get the photos out, and then you're not really in the mood to start fidgeting with the dark, changing that. It doesn't matter. People might say, oh, that's the easy way out. The fingers, the photos are taken on film and getting developed, and it's out there for you to see. It's a good photo. We appreciate it. So it doesn't really matter what form you process your film, as long as you're getting it right. And doing it yourself gives room for you to experiment. I've been pushing and pulling loads of film, and it's fun. Recently, I got a roll of Kodachrome 64. I thought, what, I'm gonna make this work. I'm gonna make this work, and more than my photos I posted on Instagram was from Kodachrome. So I thought, what, it's just like every other film has got silver in it, right? Go through black and white chemistry, fixed it, took it out, looked a bit, okay, I might get a photo here. But I just thought, I'm going to try and experiment out. Why not just run it through a bleach process again? And that took away a bit of the color layer. But even though it's not color, I got this gorgeous strip of black and white. And that is a way from just playing about experimenting. You can make something that everyone thought couldn't happen. It's amazing. It's fantastic. It's almost like it is pure science, chemistry again, high school chemistry. But they're still
Yeah.
around. You're not
So
being graded or scored.
let's talk through the whole process of developing film for those listeners who may not have had any experience with film
Yeah.
development
Okay.
at all. So what is it that you need, and how do you go about developing the film from taking it out of your camera to actually having a finished print in front of you?
Okay. Well, I print digitally. Never once printed in a dark room. Okay. But from getting the film out of the camera, just basic stuff. Developers clean water, a thermometer. A thermometer is key because you can really, really mess things up if you shoot in black and white. So room temperature, 20, 21 degrees is fine. I try to get to around 45 degrees with that warm in my tank, because that just slowly brings it down to about 39.5, 38, which is the sweet spot, really. And then when you're doing slides, you need to be a bit more careful with that. So a thermometer, patience, just make sure no one's disturbing you. You've got a clear mind of what you're doing and everything. And then, yeah, develop a tank, thermometer, pair of scissors, I guess. Snip the end off. Ah, I do tend to do a snip test with the edge of the film leader. But sometimes I forget to check the shelf life of my developers, and you could take amazing photos and pull through. Your developer might still be active, but then your fixer's gone. So you get this weird, like a nice strip of 35 mil images, but then it's not properly fixed. It's funny, like a purple background you get with it, or the other way around. So that's very important. Make sure your developer's in date, all fresh, or not spent. And then, yeah, just follow the rules and wait for the magic to
Excellent.
happen. It's pretty straightforward. It's just passion. It's just when you just like photography as well, you're passionate about something, you know what to do. The rules are there to guide you. They're not it's not set in stone. I've done things the other way around. You do that. That's the beauty of photography. It's just like music, like pottery, like any form of art, really. You can make your own rules, but there are principles, so to say, that kind of govern the outcome of things. But the rules are there for you to make and break.
So
Do what you want.
once
That's
you've
about
basically developed, like once you develop the film and you got the actual negative, then I guess you scan it in.
yeah. Hang it to dry for an hour or two. I have a scanner. It's an Epson V600. Works for me because I can scan my 126 by 6 images from there. I can scan 35. I can scan slides if I wanted to, but I don't really have the slide cut out to just kind of scan it for in digital. But yeah, scan it and archive it. That's one of the most important things because you never know you never know how good your photos might end up being because we tend to grow naturally as humans with every single thing we do. The more you do something, the more it becomes like second nature to you, muscle memory, and you get better. So I archive my negatives and the little paper message sheets and all that. You just never can tell. I might just like, what's this woman's name? Vivian Meyer. She lived photographed, and she never got to see her own greatness. People did that for her, you know. So yeah, keep your negatives because if your computer crashes or whatever, you still have the physical stuff, and that is where the real, in my opinion, real photography is
Yeah, it was
the
interesting.
physical, tangible copy.
It's actually, I think, so towards the back end of the pandemic, I spoke to Joe McNally, and so we're talking about
Nice.
what what he got up to during the pandemic, and one thing he said, like, oh, he said he went through his archive of photographs to create different things that he could potentially put together in the collections of books or whatever. And so he was telling me about how he went through literally
Yeah.
gazillions of old negatives, and I'm thinking, like, man, I don't have any negatives actually, to be honest with you, because I sort of came into photography, so I would say at the beginning of the digital age, you know. And although photography has been running in my family for generations, I didn't get really involved in film photography per se. It's always been around me and everything, but when I first started shooting myself, it was all digital already. So and ever since then, I've had this affinity with film photography, and the process, because I love the process. I love the process of everything, everything from, this is why I love portraits, because I like the whole thing from like coming up with the idea to planning how I'm gonna do it, to actually executing the shoot, to then doing the
Yeah.
post-production and the editing at the end in order to get the finished result. So just two questions that I have for you. One is, let's start at the beginning. So how do you plan a street photography shoot? Like, what's the sort of initial thinking beforehand, before you go out to shoot?
Uh, Two things: how long I'm going to shoot for, and the kind of light that's out there. If it's going to be a quick, casual shoot, then I'll probably just black MA 51.4, two rolls of film. If it's going to be a longer shoot, I tend to carry two cameras because the thing is that the good thing about the age we live in now is you can bridge the gap, analog and digital. I tend to, for shoots where I think, okay, I want to get something print worthy. I want to get something that I can put in my personal portfolio. I go with digital and analog because if you ever took a photo and film and for some reason during the process went wrong, you have a digital backup. Or if you go shooting digital and then you run out of battery, or your memory card crashes or whatever, you've got backup in film. But if it's just a casual one, camera on the shoulder, done. Then again, the light, that's the main thing. If it's an evening shoot, intending to shoot 400 wide open, unexposed to stop to 1600, 60th of a second, 1.4, boom, getting a shot. If it's daytime, I tend to go with a faster film, sorry, a slower film, 100 speed film, get overexposed to 50. But then again, I'd say it's three things now. You need to think about the kind of photo. If you go for a dreamy look, you're shooting everything at 1.4 or f2, then obviously you need to get the right stock to go with that. Sometimes I shoot at f8 to f11 because I just want that much depth in my photo, especially in a place like Canary Wharf. You see, Canary Wharf is not really the best place where you want to go and shoot everything wide open. There's just so much structure in there. There's so much structure. There's so much you can get from, especially now, this time of the year where it's the winter sun. You get the low set sun and a lot of shadow, lots of
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
it horizontal?
Yeah.
Horizontal is this way, isn't it? You get a lot of shadow on the floor. So you want to get as much in focus as possible. And if it's fast paced as well, because I shoot zone focusing a lot. So I film a camera at f8, probably 1.5 meters as well, or 8 feet. And then you just need to get in there, get the photo and move on. So it's there's a lot there. chosen truly when I think about when I'm going out to shoot street. But the main two principles are the kind of photo we need, which still ties in with how long I'm shooting for, and the kind of light. Because I mean, like from the word photography, well, recording light, isn't it? Graphs of photons, photography. It's all about the light. Light is the main determining
So for
factor
anybody
in any form of
who would want to
photography.
get into street photography, what would you say would be sort of the ideal kit to take into a place like London, for example?
Getting into street photography, not being biased because I love Leica, I recommend a Q2 monochrome. When you see in black and white, then you start to appreciate color. Color can be very distracting. That's one thing I've learned. I thought it was the other way around. Oh, it's in black and white, and photos might look a bit boring or a bit too technical. No, it's way more difficult to master color. Anyone can shoot in a photo and make it look good, but it's the story behind it. What's the impact of the photo? Does it tell a story? Can you relate to the photo? Does it take you to what the photographer saw, how the person who made that
It's a really
image
interesting thing, just
felt
looking through
at
your
that point in
Instagram
time?
feed. There's sort of, you can really see when, it's almost like one era comes to an end and then like a new era starts. And sort of, one of the things I've noticed is that you've sort of,
Yes.
you've literally drifted towards black and white. Like if you look at the whole feed, you can really tell where like there's sort of, at first, because you've got these amazing images with like really cool, like sort of steely blue tones and great oranges, and yellows and stuff like that. And then the sporadic black and whites, and then it really shifts, and it goes into like much more of a black and white mode. Which is fantastic, man. I
Yeah.
love black and white photography. Personally, I tend to always drift towards black and white, and it's, in my very limited street photography experience. So what I've done, what I tend to do is, I tend to basically take all the color out and see if it works as a black and white shot. And it's only when there's something very special about the color in the shot that I'll sort of keep it as a color shot. Yeah, but that's
It's a color shot, yeah. I tend to work that way as well. I photograph in black and white, and I don't know, maybe it's just me. There is something about taking a photo in black and white. You tend to remember it more because when you photograph in black and white, you're thinking only about the context of the photograph and the way light relates with it. You thought it's a high contrast, so you tend to remember. But then, if you're shooting with a camera, especially a digital camera that's not natively black and white, when you flip it into color, you see something completely different. Sometimes for the worse, sometimes better. But I do mix every now and then a few photos and color as well. But I think I prefer colors when you have just two
yeah.
in the scene or three. Probably like you said, the blue still and orange kind of moody feel in my previous photos, which I still I tried to bring back again recently. Um, but yeah, it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. You can nail color easily, and you could absolutely ruin a good
So
photo
I've tried a
when
couple of
not
different things. Like I
creating
shoot
it
with
in black and
a
white.
Fuji X100F, which I really love that camera. It's a cool little camera. But I tried this thing where
Fantastic.
I basically set, because you can kind of program these sort of color presets, like film simulations and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And so I put together,
considerations.
I
Yeah,
sort of play around with it. I put together my own little kind of creations. Um, and what I did try was I went out one time and I basically set the thing to black and white, so all I could see is black and white. Like even on the the back of the screen, it would record a raw image as well, just as a backup, I guess. But I thought, like, what would it be like,
yeah,
if I went out and I only shot black and white, like as if I only had a black and white camera, and I never actually see the the color version of it, and I really quite enjoyed it.
the
Um,
color. Yeah.
is that what you do, or do you record in color and then convert?
Yeah. No, the only digital camera I have,
Oh,
the
okay, so yeah.
M11, is preset in black and white. So all my photos are taken in black and white. When I upload it to my phone, it shows in black and white. When I go to edit it, it comes up with color. So I've got this tab in Lightroom set. But when I import a photo, it switches it to the Adobe monochrome. I don't want to see color. Unless I remember there's something really, really good. There's a good, maybe some level of warmth in that particular scene. If you look at one of the photos recently on my Instagram feed, there's this picture of a man and a woman. But yeah, was shot through the glass outside a coffee shop. And all you can see is this. I think there was a red light inside and a little bit of blue somewhere going on. So it was like it felt like a painterly, soul lighterish kind of picture. With the light in there, reflecting off the frosty glass, had this flame warm look. This was about 10:30 in the evening. It was cold, as 4 or 5 degrees out there. So sometimes color can breathe life into a picture. But too much of it can distract you. But I prefer to shoot in black and white because then I just focus on the structure, focus on the the emotions. As a portrait photographer yourself, you know the feeling you get when you photograph someone in black and white. You see, it's like you're seeing through the person's soul. You're there, in there with them. Whether with colors, it's skin tones, it's highlights, this, then you start looking, oh, this person's eyes are blue, and then it's just too much information.
Yeah, I mean,
Strip it
that's
down,
exactly
scale
how I
it
feel
down,
about
go
black
to
and
the
white
basic.
portraiture. It strips away a layer,
Yeah,
of of the way that we
yeah,
perceive the world and another person. And what it does is it reveals
yeah,
something that's underneath. And a lot of the time, especially with expressions, with human
yeah,
facial expressions, there's something that you can only see in black and white images, like a sense of like some emotional content, basically, that is almost hidden by the color. And
yeah.
I'm not really sure whether it's the fact that the color is a distraction from that, you know.
That's how I see it. That's how I see it. It's I mean, it's like you said, black and white is emotion, color is expression. So color you can go with the whole pure orange feel, or you could go monochrome with color as well. That's what lots of people might not know. That, oh, monochrome is black and white. No, you can go full blue scale,
Yeah.
and everything is blue. There's different shades of blue, and it's amazing. But then again, you could photograph someone probably Tower Bridge, and you have the blues, you have the reds, and the London bus going through, and then someone is walking past with a green umbrella next to someone with a yellow. It's chaotic. It's just so busy. But then again, you could actually take it with the charm of a photo by shooting in black and white. So it's all about. I think it's all about how it's the subject, I think, that determines the level of saturation, so to say, in a photo. You don't want to shoot a sunset in black and white
Yeah.
unless the light is that good, because you're losing all the charm. But then again, if you're shooting something uh, like Tate Modern in color, why would you want to do that? It's just pure structure. All you want to see there is shapes and circles and triangles, and it's all about the subject. I think that's kind of what determines for me. That's what makes me think: do I shoot this in color? Is it in black and white? If it's in color, is it pastely? Is it highly saturated? If it's in black and white, is it a flat, industrial, smoky gray you get from someone like Earl's Court? Or is it high contrast, like Never War for a
So
Gherkin?
what's your
That
process
depends.
once you've imported your photos into I guess Lightroom? What is your sort of editing process, your post-production process?
How do you edit nowadays? Well, how do you edit? Because if I'm scanning a film, it's straight from how the film is. Uh, Digital as well. I tend to use the Leica Photos app, so that comes into my phone or my little iPad Mini. the way it is in the camera. Only thing I might do is just correct for vertical lines. I'm absolutely obsessed with my vertical would have to be vertical. That's one thing. It has to be. And yeah, just probably just crop, scale down, and I think I'm trained myself to finish my photo in the camera because you're shooting analog on the rangefinder as well. So all you have this little patch in there that you just have to get it to fit in there because to me you're losing out on information. Cropping is nice, but I tend not to crop anymore because I know exactly it's muscle memory. I know where the borders of my 50 is. I know where my 28 is. If I'm shooting 90, I don't really think about because there's a three focal lengths to shoot 20, 50, 90. I don't think about the edges and the 90. I just focus on the middle. But with 50, it's a bit of both. 28, and then I actually frame my stuff in the camera and think, okay, you know what, this looks straight, and then boom, get the photo. So it's yeah, it's just couple of vertical lines. Probably add a bit. I do like vignette in my photos. I like it. It just tends to pull your eye to the middle, and then it creates this 3D pop, like micro contrast or whatever it is. It just kind of makes you see, okay, well, it's a bit like tunnel vision. Because everything else is there, but it's not really there because it's like
Yeah.
focused your attention to the center. Yeah, that's my. It's a really really straightforward raw editing process for me, and part of it's not caring about the photo, which I know sounds a bit contradictory, but the less you care about how people see your photo, the more you force them to experience what you felt when you took the photo. So
Yeah.
it's a tricky one. It's hit and miss.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
if
it's one
you
of these
pull it
things. I
off,
think,
then yeah, it's all
you know,
good.
there's this sort of there's this thing where sometimes I think like, oh well, you know, I see a shot and like something didn't go quite right, and I know I can pull it back in Photoshop. So what I do a lot is I shoot a lot of composites, for example. So there's a project like a portrait series that I shoot where there's a lot of compositing involved in that, and so of course I sort of trained myself to shoot for the edit. So in a sense, I know what's going to happen in
Mm,
post production, so I'm going to shoot specifically to that, so that you know. But street photography for me is the
that's
exact opposite, you know, where and which is why I find it so liberating, you know, because it basically takes away the shackles of having to think the way that I would normally think, you know, and it just forces me to think differently, which is great. I mean, it's very much like, in a sense, what moving to film photography has done to the way that you see, you know, an image by you know, it's obviously it's sort of forced you
yeah.
to literally think, well, okay, well that's what I can see in the viewfinder, and that's what the film is going to be like, and that's just how it is, you know. Yeah, so that's why I find street photography is just a really fascinating. It really is a challenge for me, I have to say. You know, like I, I I'm a mega fan of street photography. I love street photographers, and the ability to catch scenes, and it's not something that comes easy to me, which is why I love. In a sense, why I love the subject so much. You know, and it's all down to practice. Yeah, that's the thing. So,
Yeah.
for anybody coming to visit London, or in fact anybody who lives in and around London, what would you say would be like your top five street photography locations in London?
Ooh, that's a tricky one.
Yeah.
Paddington, like I said earlier, my number one. Uh, More London, which is where you have the Shard. That's what do you call it?
Oh yeah.
The Shard and Tower Bridge and everything. Liverpool Street is amazing. Liverpool Street's fantastic. Portobello, if you're brave enough to be in the middle of thousands of people, Portobello on a Saturday morning when the market is on, you can get some interesting photos because you blend in. No one sees you, everyone's busy, but you can get some really, really, really interesting candid photos of people. And then fifth, I'd say Canary Wharf. Canary Wharf kind of takes you back. Canary Wharf has this more structure and people feel to it, where you can really just chill, soak up the city, if you like lines, reading lines and architecture and stuff like that. I'd say every part of London is amazing. For me personally, if we were to go on a photo walk together, that's probably in that order. Is you have Paddington that kind of wakes you up into it, and then you have a bit of Paddington, more London, and then Liverpool Street. You started to get into the whole metropolis and everything, and then when you start feeling like it gets a bit boring, probably another day you could go and you go boom,
Fantastic.
all guns blazing, proper. Yeah, you're shooting an F8. There's no time to focus. You just get in there, get the photo, ninja style, as discreet as possible. And then Canary Wharf is probably the best on a Sunday morning because you get like lights reflecting off the building and the sun and everything. And yeah.
It's, you know, on the day we met in London, it was the day of the Chinese New Year, I remember. And man, I was, you know, my idea was, oh, okay, well, why don't we, you know, go down through Chinatown, you know, and take some pictures there because there's a lot going on. But I was not prepared for the amount of people out there. Oh, man.
Yeah, his name is me as well. I think I just come back from, I was heading back from Canary Wharf actually on that day. I thought, you know what, today I'm going to go shoot slides. So I had 2 rolls of Ektachrome and 1 roll of VLP50. I had a particular set of photos I wanted in my head. I wanted, you know, like I said, you know, what do you call it, the bridge, the Adams Bridge Plaza with all the rainbow lights in there. I did that. I did a light tunnel in King's Cross. Oh, yeah. Number 6, King's Cross, amazing. King's Cross, fantastic spot as well. But yeah, I just thought, you know, let's see what's happening in Central, and then it was the lunar Chinese New Year.
Yeah, it was incredible.
And, wow, what a day that was, wasn't it?
Oh, it was.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, it was.
I wish I had
nuts.
That day.
I remember, like my 11-year-old daughter came with me as well because she's into cameras. She likes taking photos. She's into dog photography, so she's a photographer. But
nice.
But she you know, she wanted to come along and do some street photography, and she got some pretty awesome shots. Actually, I have to say, it's like mega respect there. But yeah, I think she's shorter. It's a different angle. It's a different perspective. You know, but yeah, it was especially right in the, you know, the main street. What's it called? Is it called Warren Street? I can't remember. The main street leading into Chinatown, and it was so packed with people. It was like I thought I'd get murdered in there. It was just unbelievable. Jesus, but yeah, definitely, absolutely an event not to miss if you're in London around about that time. So fantastic. Well, I love your tips on locations because if you know, Steve Brazel, if you're listening to this episode, you know, jot those down because I know you're in London in a few months' time. So there you go. Anyhow, Gilbert, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast and talking to us. It was an absolute education. I absolutely love it. We have to at some point do a photo walk together in London. That'd be fantastic. And that'll be you know, we can create something that'd be extremely useful for our listeners as well. You know, for all of you in the UK. I know we have a lot of listeners in the UK, but even for our audience abroad in North America and so on, you know, if you are listening, if you are planning on coming to London, it's one of the most picturesque cities in the world. It's very, very different from, you know, from New York or Chicago or Los Angeles, and really has a very unique vibe. It's such a blended experience that I highly recommend it. Anyway, Gilbert, an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being on the show today. Yeah, absolutely welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Now, this is it. We've come to the end of Camera Shake Podcast, episode 145. If you like this episode, remember to like and subscribe if you are watching on YouTube. And if you are listening on the audio side of things, particularly if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, just scroll down and give us a little 5-star rating and leave us a little comment because it really does help us being found in the great wide big sea of podcasts out there. Anyway, thank you so much to today's guests, and we'll be back next Thursday.